So I'll be talking from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Uddhav Gita. This is the 11th canto and the last verse, or the last chapter of the Uddhav Gita, which is titled as Bhakti Yoga. So earlier we had planned this as a Bhagavatam study, which would have longer time. I was planning to take a set of verses, but probably because of lesser time, we will not be able to take a set of verses. I'll take one verse and I'll elaborate, and then we can have question answers. So this is 11:29:4. Kim chitramachyuta tavaitadashesha bandho daseshvananya sharaneshu yadatma sattvam yorochayat samrughai swayam ishvaranam shrimad kiritat pidita padapitha. This is Uddhava speaking, and the Uddhav Gita has many similarities with the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita, actually Uddhav Gita in one sense also is Bhagavad Gita. If we consider consider the source, Uddhav Gita is also spoken by Bhagavan. But because the Gita that Krishna spoke to Arjuna, that is prominently known as the Bhagavad Gita. So this Gita is named not to differentiate it from the other more famous Gita. This Gita is named not after the source of the Gita, but after the object of the Gita. So in one sense, by symmetry, we could say both of them are Bhagavad Gita, and the book which we call as Bhagavad Gita is the Bhagavad Gita spoken to Arjuna, and this is the Bhagavad Gita spoken to Uddhava. But to avoid that ambiguity, that is called as Bhagavad Gita, and this is called as Uddhav Gita. So the Uddhav Gita is much longer. The Bhagavad Gita has 18 chapters. The Uddhav Gita has around 24 chapters, but it's not just the longer chapters, more number of chapters, but the chapters themselves are much longer. And Krishna goes much deeper in many of the subjects. Now there are various similarities in terms of even the questions that Uddhava asks. So when Krishna talks about the three modes of material nature, Uddhava asks, what are these modes? How does one transcend the modes? How does one know who has transcended the modes? And that is a similar question to what Arjuna has asked also. So here this chapter starts with a question similar to the question asked in the 6th chapter by Arjuna after hearing the process of Ashtanga Yoga. And he says that this process is actually not very practical. Chanchalam, he says, Yoyam yoga svaya prokta samyena madhusudena etasyaham na pashyami chanchalatva sitim stiram. He says this process is not practical because the mind is very restless, and to keep it fixed is very difficult. So here also Uddhava starts with a similar question, and he says that, oh Lord, I have seen that those people who endeavor in the path of yoga for attaining perfection, they soon become dejected, they become disappointed, frustrated, because they are not able to attain success, because they are not able to focus the mind. But instead of asking what should be done, as does Arjuna, so Arjuna simply says that the process is impractical and he leaves it, and Krishna encourages him and then tells about Bhakti Yoga. So here Krishna has already spoken about Uddhava, about Bhakti Yoga. So here Uddhava, rather than just stopping with pointing out the impracticality of the process of Ashtanga Yoga, he goes forward and says, therefore the wise people practice Bhakti Yoga. And in that thread of verses, so that's what happened in the previous 4 verses till now, and in this verse and the next few verses, he glorifies the process of Bhakti. And in his glorification of the process of Bhakti, he says, what is the astonishing thing about Bhakti? Now normally when we talk about a process, now any process we want to talk about, suppose there's a tuition classes, and the tuition classes say, the students who come into our class, the product is that they become toppers. They become IIT toppers, we have got IIT AIR1, AIR2, AIR3, whatever. So then, the students came in unprepared or a little less prepared or unaware of what to do, and they became toppers. So anything that is a process that is glorified by its product, what it brought about. Similarly, Uddhava here glorifies the process of bhakti by talking about what is the result. So, Kim Chitram, how amazing it is, he says, Achyutam Tavaitat Ashesha Bandho. Oh Lord, you are the friend of all living beings. But when you descended as Ram, what was so astonishing was that Sahamrugai, the monkeys, they were walking next to you, they were hugging you, they were having such close proximity to you, to that same Supreme Person. For just getting a darshan of him, the great devatas earlier offered extensive prayers. So, for getting the darshan of this Lord, the devatas had offered great prayers, and for getting, for touching his, putting their head on the lotus feet, they struggled. But the monkeys got intimate association. So, such is the wonderful nature of the Lord. And this became possible, why? Because these monkeys were bhaktas. So thus he glorifies the process of bhakti for its capacity to provide proximity to the Lord. What bhakti does is, it grants us proximity to Krishna. So proximity can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be spiritual. Physical proximity means that we go close to a person. So Srila Prabhupada doesn't stress physical proximity too much. He says that you can have a fly or a mosquito sitting on the spiritual master's body. It's actually touching the body of the spiritual master, but it's just an irritation to the spiritual master. So physical proximity is, in that sense, not the most important form of proximity. Emotional proximity means that sometimes say two friends are very close to each other, or say if a husband and wife are close to each other, and some guest comes in the house, and the husband just looks at the wife and points with the eyes. And the wife understands, maybe I should arrange some tea or some snacks or whatever. So if one friend sees another friend and they just look at each other, yeah, maybe this is what we should be doing in this situation. So basically, when there is emotional proximity, then people understand each other even through unspoken communication, just through some signals. So now that is emotional proximity, where the thoughts and the emotions are more in agreement with each other. Beyond that, there is spiritual proximity. Spiritual proximity means not only are the emotions in agreement, but there is an agreement of spiritual purpose. Now when we talk about emotional proximity, two people can be emotionally proximate, but they may not have any spiritual dimension to their proximity. They may have a non-spiritual relationship also. But spiritual means there's a commonality of purpose, and that purpose is centered on spiritual growth. Purpose is centered on service to Krishna, service to the Supreme Lord. And that is the kind of proximity that the Vanaras had with Lord Ram. Now, in the Ramayana, at one particular time, there are several times during the course of the Ramayana war that the Vanaras found themselves at their wits' end. That means they just didn't know what to do. And most of this time it happened, the major threats that Ram's army faced was on 3 occasions. Twice because of the attack of Indrajit, once because of the attack of Kumbhakarna. Ravana came towards the attack and he attacked fiercely also, but Ram was there usually to counter him. So now at one particular point in the attack, in the Indrajit, we know he came several times, and there were 3 major battles, and in the first 2 occasions Indrajit won, but Indrajit's defeat was caused by his overconfidence. The overconfidence was that when his enemy was down, he thought his enemy is out. But when he was, there's a boxing match going on, and one boxer he gives a knockdown punch. Now a knockdown punch is not necessarily a knockout punch. Knockdown means the person falls down. Knockout means the person becomes unconscious and is no longer able to fight. Suppose the person just knocks down, and it's a fierce punch. The other person has fallen down, and it's almost appears they lost the match. And before, usually there is the referee who counts 1, 2, 3 or something like that, depending on which kind of format it is. There they count till 3 or they count till 5 or whatever. And before that, the opponent has to get up. Now, even before the opponent, even the referee has counted, even before the match is actually won, suppose this person who has delivered the knockdown punch, he starts going on a celebratory run. Yeah, I won, I won, I won. And then while he is celebrating, the opponent gets up and gives him a big punch which knocks him down. So, this is what happened with Indrajit. He had powerful weapons and he used those powerful weapons, but he was overconfident that my weapons will have killed my enemy. So his problem was, it is said that underestimate yourself and overestimate your opposition. So then we won't be caught off guard. But quite often what Indrajit did was, he overestimated himself, he underestimated his opposition. Now, when Indrajit attacked the forces of Ram, on one particular occasion he used the Sarpastra, Nagastra you could say, and with that he bound all the Vanaras. He bound many of the Vanaras, and eventually he bound Ram and Lakshman also. And because of the bites of the snakes, the repeated bites, Ram and Lakshman fell unconscious, and it appeared as if they were dead. And when it appeared as if they were dead, at that time, Indrajit just celebrated and went back, and he told his father that your enemies are dead, and he says all the Vanaras are grieving. He said, let them grieve, let the gravity and the reality of their defeat sink into them, and after they are further demoralized, if they still have the guts to fight, I will wipe them out. So he had actually not finished the fight, but he thought he had already finished. So as actually, because now Indrajit was not a fool, he was overconfident, but he was not a fool. He observed and he saw actually the Ram and Lakshman seemed to be entirely lifeless. So it was, even the Vanaras thought that they are dead. It was Vibhishan who pointed out, he says, although they don't seem to be breathing, but their color has not yet faded. And so normally for any lesser people, lesser opponents, the Sarpastra would have just killed them immediately. But because Ram and Lakshman were very powerful, it knocked them so unconscious that most symptoms of life were not there. But life had not yet departed. And they were still deliberating what to do. How to solve this situation. The Vanaras didn't know, because the Sarpas had just bound them around, and the vicious bond it was, nothing could be done. And suddenly they saw in this horizon a storm coming. And I thought, what is this now? Suddenly a storm has come. It appears that another big danger has come. And as that storm swept down on them, they saw actually it was not a storm, it was a giant bird. And that bird just swept down. And that bird was actually eagle. And as this eagle swooped down on brothers, initially the Vanaras didn't know what was the intention of this bird. But as they swooped down, suddenly the snake saw, oh, this eagle has come. And snakes live in mortal fear of eagles. So, as the eagle just swept down on them, the snakes just unwound themselves and fled away. And as this bird came and shaded Ram and Lakshman with his wings, his huge wings, then Ram and Lakshman came out as if from a swoon. And they got up and they seemed fully recovered. So Ram looked at this giant bird, and this giant bird offered the wings. He asked, who are you? So now, who was this bird? It is Garuda. Garuda said, oh my lord, I am your eternal servant. Do you not recognize me? actually the Ramayana has a very intriguing, revealing come concealing of Ram's divinity. See, every book has a particular mood and a particular focus, and based on that mood, everything in that book is organized. So the Ramayana begins with a question of, now when I talk about the Ramayana, I am talking about the Valmiki Ramayana. Some other later versions of Ramayana, they depict things differently. But in the Valmiki Ramayana, the focus is, it begins with the question, the Mula Prashna of the Valmiki Ramayana is, who is an ideal person? What are the characteristics of an ideal person? That's what Valmiki Rishi asks Narad Muni. And Narad Muni gives a brief description of the character and the activities of Lord Ram, and then Valmiki Rishi goes into a trance and gets a further revelation, and that revelation becomes expressed as the Ramayana. So throughout the Ramayana, the focus is on depicting Ram as an ideal human being, and if he is depicted explicitly as God, then the role of setting an example for everyone, that role becomes dominant. Oh, God can do anything, I can't do it. So what the Ramayana does is, from his actions and from the context, it is evident that Ram is God. In fact, before the Ramayana storyline launches itself, there is a description that the Devatas have gone to Vishnu and they have asked that you please help us curb the terrorizing activities of Ravana. And Vishnu says, I will descend in the dynasty of the Surya Vamsha as the son of Dashrath. So that is clear that the son of Dashrath is going to be Ram. But there is, in the Valmiki Ramayana, there is no place where there is an explicit statement of Ram's divinity. That means in the Valmiki Ramayana, no one offers prayers to Ram as if he is God. That is done in later versions of the Ramayana, like Adhyatma Ramayana or the Ramcharitmanas or other places. But the Valmiki Ramayana focuses on this theme of depicting Ram's ideal character. And actually, Ram's divinity, in one sense, is acknowledged by Ram only at the end of the war. At the end of the war, when Ravana is killed. At that time, the Devatas come in the sky and they thank Ram. So at that time, Indra is there, Brahma is there, Shiva is there, and they all thank him. And while thanking him, they say that you are the Supreme Vishnu. You have descended to this earth to rid it of the scourge that was Ravana. And now that you have accomplished your mission, we are grateful to you for that. So at this particular point, it is Garuda who declares that, oh my Lord, I am your eternal servant. And now Ram neither acknowledges it nor denies it. Ram just stays silent. And then Garuda goes on and says that, now this is the depiction in the Valmiki Ramayana. So then what happens is Garuda says that, oh Lord, the snakes are my mortal enemies and I was hoping to finish them, but they fled. Please give me a permission so that I will go in pursuit of them. And Ram gives permission and Garuda goes away. And then Garuda also says, oh Lord, you are soon going to be successful in this battle with this demon Ravana. So this is the lesser known incident. The more well known incident about Indrajit's attack is when Indrajit attacks and Lakshman falls unconscious because of that fatal arrow, lethal arrow. And it would have been fatal if Hanuman had not gone and got the Mrit Sanjeevani. So, but the point here is that in this battle, we see even Garuda, in this whole Ramayana, when Garuda approaches Ram in a very reverential mood. Although he is rendering service, he is aware that Ram is God. Now, as far as the Vanaras are concerned, Ram has such a wonderful relationship with them that he lives with them. He lives in the same tent on the same floor, and then when the Vanaras die in the war, there is a jarring contrast between the way Ravana deals with his martyrs and the way Ram deals. Ravana gives standing orders that at the evening, when the sun sets, the hostilities, the war would go on from morning to evening, and at night hostilities would stop. That was the usual standard. Although sometimes there was a surprise attack made at night also. But Ravana had given standing instructions that at every sunset, before the Rakshasas retreat, they should take all the bodies of the dead Rakshasas and throw them into the ocean. And he said, by throwing away the bodies, when the Vanaras look, they will see no enemies have been killed and they will become disheartened. So, Ravana was the propounder of the use and throw culture. Literally use and throw, and not just things but people. Just use and throw. Those who are killed, just throw them away, discard them. No acknowledgement of their service, no gratitude for their service, no performing last rites for them, nothing, just throw away their bodies. Whereas Ram, on the other hand, he would stay awake late into the night and he would personally perform the last rites for whoever Vanaras had died at that time. And later on, after the war gets over, and the Devatas come and ask Ram that, you have fulfilled a great mission for us. So, what blessing would you like us to give? So at that time, Ram says that these Vanaras, they have helped me so much in this war. But unfortunately, because I am right now in exile, I cannot give anything to them. So therefore, I request that the only blessing that I want is you bless these Vanaras. Wherever they live, let them have abundant food, abundant drink, and let them never have to face starvation. And of course, Ram further acknowledges them by taking them all through his Pushpak Viman to Ayodhya and have them join in the celebration of his coronation. But the point is that Ram does not ask anything for himself. He asks for the Vanaras, that let them be prosperous. Tavaita dashesha bandho. So what happens, even when the Lord seems to be poverty stricken, he doesn't have anything, at that time he is concerned about those who are serving him. In fact, when Hanuman comes back from Lanka with the news that Sita has been found, at that time Ram says that you have given me such a great, you've done such a heroic service. By the news about Sita's whereabouts, you have given me something so great. I want to offer something in return to you. What can I offer? Unfortunately, I have nothing to offer you. And therefore, I will offer you my embrace. And Lord of Comfort, and he embraces Hanuman, offering himself. The commentators over here, Govindaraj, in his commentary, explains that actually there are many valuable things in this world, but the most valuable thing is the Lord's own form. He is called as Bhushanam Bhushitangaha, that he is called as the ornament of all ornaments. That it is not that the ornaments glorify him, people wear ornaments so that they look beautiful, but ornaments don't beautify him, he beautifies the ornaments. And it is that Lord who is all attractive, whose form is the greatest treasure. So when the Lord offers Hanuman an embrace, it's not just an embrace that he is offering, he is offering his own form to Hanuman. And at that time, Hanuman is always devoted to Ram, but through that embrace, Ram becomes permanently placed and imprinted in the heart of Ram. And later on, we have that famous pastime where Hanuman rips open his chest, and Ram is revealed over there. So that there is in the Gopal Champu, which is a book talking about Krishna Lila, quite an analytical book, which resolves many unanswered questions that might come when they read the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. There he talks about, Jiva Goswami talks about two kinds of remembrance of the Lord. It says one is smruti and the other is furti. Smruti is conscious recollection. So I decide I want to think about Krishna. So I think, okay, I'll think about, say, Krishna's Kaliya Daman Leela, and I sit and concentrate and try to recollect. Whereas Spurti is spontaneous recollection. That means without any effort on our part, just the memory starts streaming. So for example, say, if we have a place where we used to go, maybe our grandparents' house or somewhere, which we used to go in our childhood, and we had very happy memories of playing there, maybe going around in the garden, singing in the, playing in the river or whatever. Now, we may think, oh, I had such nice times in my childhood, and we may try to recollect that. But suppose now we go to some place, and that place is very similar to the place which we had in childhood, and suddenly the memories arise. So, Sfurti is actually at a higher level of spiritual advancement. For us, what we try to do is Smriti. We try to consciously recollect. But for advanced devotees, there is Spurti. Spontaneously, the memories arrive and they overwhelm. So for Hanuman, where he was always doing Smriti of the Lord. But especially after this blessing, this embrace that he got, what he did was not just Smriti, Spurti. He became overwhelmed with remembrance of the Lord. So, what the Lord offered, here it is said that, oh, you offered physical proximity to those, to the Vanaras, something which even the Devatas did not have. That is demonstrated here. Now, in one case it was Garuda who came and helped Ram. Another case we know it was Hanuman himself who came and brought the herbs, healing herbs. So either way, the point which is important here is that the Lord becomes accessible through devotional service. The Devatas are also Bhaktas, but they are not Bhaktas at the same level as which the Vanaras are. The Devatas are worshipping in a through sense of distance, reverential mode of worship, whereas the Vanaras are offering intimate practical service. And for us as sadhakas, the thought of proximity of the Lord may seem very remote, but the fact is Krishna is very close to us. In fact, he is closer than the closest person can ever be to us. Even if a person very lovingly and tightly embraces us, that person cannot come as close to us as Krishna is always. Because Krishna is right next to us in our own heart. And his proximity is not just in terms of physical location, but it is also in terms of spiritual affection. No one can love us more than Krishna. No one can desire our good more than Krishna. And no one strives for our good more than Krishna. And in Bhakti Yoga, the more we focus on the glory of Krishna, the more we appreciate the glory of Bhakti. And the more we become inspired to practice the process of Bhakti. Such is the wonderful Lord that I am striving to serve. And there are various different ways in which one can focus the mind. So, Ashtanga Yoga, the context of this, why is he glorifying Bhakti like this? The context of Uddhava's speech is that he's saying by the process of Ashtanga Yoga, concentrating the mind is very difficult and people become disheartened. The yogis become disheartened. He says, yes, there are various ways of concentrating the mind, but the maximum concentration comes through affection. You know, when we love something, at that time, we naturally get absorbed in it. Now, some people are cricket fans. At that time, if a cricket match is going on, at that time, they just don't want to tolerate any interference. I just want to watch the cricket match. And if anybody comes in the way, shout, get out of the way, get out of the way. I don't want to miss even one moment of the action over there. So it's not that at that time they have to concentrate. There is natural focus. Why? There is affection. Now, we may say, oh, cricket match is sense gratification, movie is sense gratification. No, that is fine. The important point is, there is absorption. So, that absorption comes when we are attracted to something. When there is attraction for something, the absorption comes automatically. And the same principle of attraction which we right now have for certain material things, we can have that for Krishna also. And that is what the process of Bhakti Yoga does. Bhakti Yoga is not just a process of, say, chanting some mantras or going to temple for darshan or things like that. All that is fine. That is very important. But what Bhakti does internally is redirect our attraction from this world towards Krishna. The process of Bhakti Yoga, as we keep practicing Bhakti, we get more and more realizations of Krishna's all attractiveness. And as that all attractiveness becomes more and more revealed, then our attraction to Him increases. See, normally people talk about, in material world, they talk about falling in love. So, the idea of falling in love, it is like you're walking along and there's a ditch and you fall into the ditch. Isn't it? So, the point of making is falling is not necessarily negative connotation, but the point is falling is, it's just something which happens to you. So people say, oh, I saw someone and they saw me and then we touched each other, there was electricity that went through our body and we fell in love. So people talk about emotions as something that just happens to us. Now the point is that actually there may be some attraction that happens at first sight. People, they talk about love at first sight. Well, whether there is love at first sight or not, the relationship depends not on whether there is love at first sight, but it depends on what happens after many sights. So actually relationships depend on commitment. There may be some infatuation, there may be some affection. It's possible that there can be a lasting relationship, but that lasting relationship doesn't depend on what emotion that was there initially. It depends on the kind of commitment that one is ready to invest in the relationship. Every relationship essentially centers on commitment. So sometimes people ask, oh, why is Indian culture so primitive? There are all arranged marriages, there are no love marriages. No, but the point is this language, this dichotomy itself is wrong. When they say there are arranged marriages and no love marriages, that means that they are assuming that in arranged marriage there is no love. But if somebody takes the same thing, why do we have not love marriages and arranged marriages? Why do we have infatuation marriages and marriages? No, see, the words itself are made in such a way that the debate is already settled before the debate started. So it's biased language. But the fact is, whether the marriage is arranged or whether it is because of initial one's own attraction to someone, the relationship's longevity will depend on the commitment. And for many people in traditional cultures, not just in India, in many other parts of the world also, traditionally, when a relationship was formed based on, with the blessings of the elders, with the arrangement and thoughtful guidance of one's elders, they felt that arrangement and blessings was the spur for the commitment for the relationship, and the relationship would go on that way. So the point I'm making, this is not going to be a discussion on marriage, but the point is that emotions are not just something that happens to us. They may happen sometimes to us, but the relationships depend not just on emotions that happen. Relationships depend on conscious commitment. That's why many times when people have love marriages, if they don't follow that initial attraction, whatever might be there, with a commitment, then at one time people say, I can't live without you, and a few months later they say, I can't live with you. So it just goes to the other extreme entirely. Why? Because there is attachment and there is the opposite of attachment, that is there is aversion, there is frustration. So bhakti is neither about attachment, it is neither about detachment, it is about commitment. So bhakti, when we talk about the process of bhakti, there are emotions, and when emotions come, it's wonderful. But just as in any relationship in the world, the longevity, the stability of the relationship depends on the commitment that people bring into that relationship. Similarly, in our relationship with Krishna, The longevity and stability of our relationship with Krishna will depend on the commitment that we bring to the process of bhakti. And that commitment comes not just when we just feel good. Oh, when I take darshan I feel so good. When I chant and dance in kirtan I feel good. All that is very good if you feel good. But the commitment comes when we understand the glory of Krishna. And that understanding comes by studying scripture, by understanding the wonderful pastimes of Krishna and appreciating how that Supreme Lord, who doesn't just, Krishna or even Ram, is not a God who delights in his godhood. Now I am God, all of you come and bow down to me. No, Krishna delights in the reciprocation of love. So he values the reciprocation of affection more than the acknowledgement of his godhood. And that's what Ram demonstrates in Avatar. He doesn't go about telling everyone, my God, bow down to me. No, he just reciprocates. And whoever wants to serve him, he accepts them and he embraces them, even if they be Vanaras. So actually speaking, the Vanaras, from the perspective of the three modes, monkeys are actually considered Tamoguna. But these monkeys are revealed to be higher than Devatas who are considered to be Sattva-guna. Why? Because these monkeys had bhakti. And that bhakti elevated them to a level higher than those who were also from the point of material piety at a very high position. And this process of bhakti, this transformational potency of bhakti, this experiential capacity of bhakti. Experiential capacity means the capacity of bhakti to give us experience of Krishna. That is a great inspiration for sadhakas in absorbing themselves in Krishna and thereby increasing the attraction towards Krishna. So I'll conclude with one point. There is absorption that comes from attraction. When we are attracted to something, we naturally get absorbed in it. But there is another absorption that can come from conviction. So I may not be attracted to something right now, but if I am convinced this is important, I need to do it. Suppose I like a particular subject which I am studying. I like to read a particular subject. I just get absorbed in it naturally. But there is maybe some subject which I don't like so much. But if I know tomorrow is exam, it's a very important exam, I have to study. At that time also I can get absorbed. So like that right now for us, we may not have so much attraction to Krishna. And so bhakti will eventually offer us absorption in Krishna that comes from attraction. That is spurti. But at our stage, when we hear the glories of Krishna, that will give us the conviction which can help in absorption. And the more we absorb ourselves in Krishna, the more there is a revelation of his beauty, of his glory, of his mercy, and then there is further attraction that is engendered. And this way, bhakti propels us forward on the path towards him in a way that is fruitful and joyful. Fruitful because we experience Krishna, and joyful because as we experience Krishna more and more, we get connected with the one who is the source of all happiness. So I'll summarize. I started here by talking about the Uddhava Gita and the Bhagavad Gita, the similarities in terms of how both involve similar questions, but the Uddhava Gita goes more into details. And in the Uddhava Gita here, Uddhava is speaking and he says, the Ashtanga Yoga, it's very difficult to fix the mind, but by bhakti one can fix the mind. And therefore wise people practice bhakti. And the glory of bhakti is that it delivers proximity to the Lord. So we discussed physical, emotional and spiritual proximities. And in that connection we discussed Ram Leela, and primarily we discussed how Ram is not directly portrayed as divine, but in his pastimes he appears to be like a human being so as to increase the intimacy of the affection. So when the Vanaras see Ram has fallen, they are in anxiety. They think that he is God, he is immortal, he can never die. They will not have that emotion. So actually Ram has fallen. And Garuda comes along and helps. So Indrajit, he had power, but his weakness was his overconfidence. And he mistook to be the knockdown blow to be the knockout blow. And eventually he lost because of that. And we discussed how Hanuman, Lord Ram embraced him and offered himself, his Sachitananda Vigraha, which is the greatest treasure in the world, to Hanuman. And then that's how the Lord became eternally imprinted within his heart. Not just as Smriti, but as Spurti. And in our practice of bhakti, we discussed that the highest absorption in Krishna comes through attraction, but attraction or affection is not just something that happens. People talk about falling in love, but it is not, that love is not just something that happens. It may happen, but the relationship will depend on how committed one it is. It will not depend on love at first sight, but on what happens after many sights. So the commitment is more important than either the extreme of attachment or aversion or detachment. Commitment is what makes relations, gives longevity and stability to relationships, and that applies to our relationship with Krishna also. And when we practice bhakti, we may not have absorption based on attraction right now, but if we hear about the glories of Krishna, then that gives us conviction. Krishna is such a wonderful, lovable, all attractive Lord. And that conviction becomes the boost, becomes the motivator for our absorption. And when that absorption, His glory is revealed, and then His attractiveness becomes apparent to us, and then the absorption comes through attraction. And that's how bhakti becomes susukham kartam, it becomes joyfully performed. So thank you very much. Are there any questions? Yes. Yeah, no problem, sure. You can speak loudly.
Different from this topic. Actually, my question is related to the revolution of the planets. As we know that there are the two ways we can study the revolution of the planet. One is all the planets are revolving around the sun, and another is all the planets, including the sun, are revolving around the earth. Actually, I don't know, I forget the names, but
geocentric and heliocentric.
Yeah. Then I am a little confused. Although I didn't study in detail, we say that there are 14 planets. Middle is earthly planets. How we can connect these all vertically inclined planets, and this is the revolution of the planetary system.
Okay. So if we have 14 planetary systems, then which are vertically one above the other, how do we reconcile that with the idea of either heliocentric or the geocentric models of the solar system or the universe at large? See, firstly, when we talk about the 14 planetary systems, we shouldn't think of that simply in terms of physical space. Why not? Because the upper planet Swargaloka and others, they are higher planetary systems. They are made of subtler elements. So, being made of subtler elements, they are not situated in space as we conceive it. They are situated in an entirely different level of existence. To give a simpler illustration of this, they say India and Australia, or say maybe Australia and America are somewhat antipodal, or say two countries which are at the opposite parts of the globe. So, Australia and India are also, we can roughly say, for the globe, for argument's sake. So now people in Australia say that heaven is up. People in India say heaven is up. And the earth is round, which is up? Isn't it? Both places heaven is up, but the up is just two opposite directions. So when we talk about the up, heaven being up, it is not just up in a literal physical sense. The heaven is up in a karmic sense. That there is the various lokas, various planetary systems, they are arranged in a hierarchy in terms of the karmic qualifications of the residents over there. So those who have done greater punya, they are in the higher planetary system. Those who have done lesser punya, they are in the lower planetary systems, depending on the kind of pious or impious actions that they have done. And for the sake of depiction, just like the earth is round, but on an atlas, the earth is depicted in a straight or on a map. It's depicted in a 2D plane, where we see it linearly. So like that, for the sake of depiction, we may talk about the 14 planetary systems in terms of vertical continuity in space. But that vertical dimension is not a physical distance. Some physical distance may be given for a sense of estimate, but the whole point is that everything in this cosmos is, especially in terms of the planetary systems, the higher planetary system, it's subtle. It's not made of gross matter at all. So we cannot apply gross dimensions to this whole discussion. So without getting into the technicalities of the 14 planetary systems, now, so in the morning I talked about how Ayurveda and allopathy, they are two different ways of looking, and we can't just mishmash concepts from here and put them there. We have to see what that concept means within its own conceptual model. So instead of getting into the 14 planetary systems are not in terms of simple physical space as we understand it in modern cosmology. But coming to the question about geocentric or heliocentric, the point is that especially after Einstein talked about the relativity of motion, and before that also Tycho Brahe and other cosmologists have pointed out that actually the same explanation, more or less, for all the cosmic phenomena can be given based on whether we consider the solar system to be geocentric or heliocentric. See, motion in that sense is relative. Yes, I said in the past also, people who had a geocentric model, they also were able to predict eclipses. I don't go into the technicalities over here, but they are also able to predict eclipses and other cosmic events. So now the heliocentric model is in some ways simpler, and there is a principle in science called Occam's razor, where they say the simpler method should always be accepted, simpler explanation should be accepted. But that does not mean that the alternative explanation is necessarily wrong. It's simply an operational model that a simpler explanation should be accepted. So the point is that within modern cosmology, whatever explanations we can get using the heliocentric, whatever explanation for various cosmic phenomena we can get using the heliocentric, we can also get them using the geocentric model. Because what we know for sure is that there is relative motion. But for essence, in terms of mathematics, it doesn't matter whether it is this or it is that. Whatever predictions that come from the model, they can come from either models, and they can come with a fairly equal level of accuracy. So there's no need to, when we study the cosmos as is explained in the Bhagavatam, that the trap is to get caught in a literal comparison of this with that. So in fact, in Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in an essay called the Bhagavad Its Theology, he says that in one sense the fifth canto cosmology is meant to protect the 10th canto revelation of Krishna from doubting souls. So the fifth canto cosmology and all its complication, if people just get too caught in that, then they won't move forward towards the essence of the 10th canto of the Bhagavad. So the point is that we recognize that the Bhagavatam is talking about cosmology from a different perspective, and there are different levels of perception, and the Bhagavatam's cosmic descriptions are of a different scale, from a different frame of reference. That's why there's no need to mishmash points from this model and impose them on some other model. That only leads to confusion, and that leads to a complexity where complexity is not necessary. There are two different models and they work in their own ways. So if somebody is more interested in the study of the Bhagavatam's cosmology, one of ISKCON's most prominent devotee scientists was Sadaput Prabhu, Dr. Richard L. Thompson. He's written a book called Vedic Cosmography, which does a very reasonable explanation of the concepts of the Vedic cosmos of the Puran, Bhagavatam's cosmos basically, from the modern perspective. And then he's written a later book also, Mysteries of the Sacred Universe, which is a fairly complicated book, where he describes how the Bhagavatam is using a complicated ensemble, conceptual model for explaining things. So one who is especially interested can study those books. if required. But the point is, don't just crisscross things from here and there and try to correlate, because there are two different ways of looking at the cosmos. Okay? Any other questions?
Prabhuji,
Yeah.
you said that reading scripture and appreciating will build our commitment. But I have observed that after reading also, commitment is very low on that.
Okay. So if we say that after reading scripture, our conviction, our commitment increases, but what should we if after reading that is not happening? Yes, then we have to actually see, introspect and find out how we are studying scripture. Just like when I eat food, the natural result of eating food is that I get energy. But sometimes it may happen that there may be some germs in the stomach because of which I eat the food and the germs eat all the food and I don't get any energy. Or sometimes I may be eating certain kinds of food which are not really digestible for me, so they don't give me the energy. So we have to observe what exactly are we doing. So reading is not a stereotype activity. Now some devotees may read a lot and they feel, oh, I read 50 pages today, I read 100 pages today, and then I feel, yes, I'm reading Bhagavatam, I'm going forward. Some other devotees may spend 1 hour reading just 3-4 pages. They go deep and they analyze. We read something and then we write something based on it. Or we read one concept and then we try to understand this concept. Maybe I read some other purport somewhere else, or maybe read some other articles on based on that. And I try to not just complete the pages just to keep a number count of how many pages I have read, but we actually move towards comprehending what is stated over there. So different people have different kinds of intellectual needs. So we have to find out what nourishes us. So in the early stages of our life, quite often we'll find that our inspiration, comprehension and conviction all come much more through hearing than through reading. Reading we do as a service to Srila Prabhupada and to the Shastra, but we see the relevance of Shastra to our lives primarily through classes. So if we find that our Shastric study is not so nourishing, then we can try to more correlate our Shastric study with our hearing. That means if you are reading Bhagavad Gita, find out if somebody has, there are many devotees who have done this, we find out some classes on that same section of the Bhagavad Gita. So if you are reading one chapter, you don't need to just rush to that chapter and go to the next chapter. Read the chapter and hear some classes on that chapter. And then hear the class and then again come back and read that. And then you get much more comprehension. So harmonizing our reading and hearing is a very powerful way of increasing our absorption in both. The two become synergistic. We hear and then we read, oh, I didn't notice this only when I was reading this. And then I read that, oh, when I hear this, oh, now this becomes clear. This is a nice way of explaining this. So that way we can find out what are the ways in which we can make our scriptural study more nourishing for ourselves. And we also have to know that not everybody will find the same things equally inspiring. So sometimes for some devotees, scriptural study may not be their primary source of inspiration. It may be certain services, certain other limbs of bhakti, which may inspire them. So scriptural study is one limb of bhakti. It is very important, but it is not the only activity in bhakti. So when we harmonize our scriptural study with other activities in bhakti, so some devotees may find practical services more inspiring. So then what we could do is a service that we find inspiring, we read something in scripture which is connected with that. So for example, if you like to distribute books, then we read something about preaching, about book distribution. And in that way, we try to bring a sense of connectedness between what attracts us and what we are studying. And that way, we can make our scriptural study more nourishing. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Pretty many times this question comes from devotees' side, that while guiding devotees, they come with different problems. So one solution which is very common and we always give, take shelter of Krishna in terms of everything. And especially there are sometimes devotees who may have some specific problems. So they may try to take shelter of some other source, like for example some other demigod. For example, if some devotee comes and tells, Prabhu, there's some graha shanti in our house. So just for this making things peaceful, I'm just going to that demigod and making things useful. Ultimately, I'm Krishna devotees only. And it is just like I have fever, I'm going to doctor and paying. It's not that I'm doctor's devotee. I'm devotee of Krishna only. So then, when we give such kind, and when we say that okay, you can go to that demigod, but I'm chanting also, then it appears like we are diluting the principle. So in our course of preaching and helping devotees, how we can reconcile these two things, that if we become too strict on Krishna, then that devotee feels impractical.
Correct. Yeah. So, if some devotee while practicing bhakti feels that for a specific problem one can worship the devata, is that dilution of the purity of bhakti? The most important thing in bhakti is steady practice. Steady, sustainable practice that can be done lifelong. That is what is the most important thing. The level at which practice is done, that will vary according to time, place, circumstance. So not everybody can always practice at the same level. Just like if I am, say, going to drive from here to Pune, if the traffic is high, I'll have to drive slowly. If the traffic is low, I'll drive faster. So the point is that for bhaktas, Krishna is the source of everything. And we should take shelter of Krishna always. At the same time, if for some devotees, based on maybe their past upbringing or their present association, their relatives or whatever they feel that I've got this problem, it is not really solved and I wish to worship some devata. So we can connect them with some devotee astrologers. Now in the Gopal Bhatta Goswami in his writing, and subsequent acharyas also thereafter, they have explained how each of the devatas has a particular form of Vishnu who supervises that particular devata. So for example, if there is a particular ritual that is described to appease Saturn, then what the Vaishnava rituals do is, instead of appeasing Saturn, we focus on appeasing the form of Vishnu who is supervising Saturn. So for example, if somebody has obstacles, instead of worshipping Ganesh, one can worship Narsimha. Ganesh, it is said, is Pada Pankaja. So he has offered his tasks to Narsimha. So we can offer prayers to Narsimha, and there can be customized prayers which can be told. There is Narsimha Kavacha and some specific kind of prayers that are there. So if the standard process of bhakti doesn't work in some cases, then the customized process of bhakti meant to deal with specific issues, that can be recommended. And if that doesn't work and the problem is serious, we don't have to come in between the devotee and whatever solution they feel it works for them. So in certain minor situations, if a devotee feels the need to go to some other source of shelter and take that shelter, if the philosophical understanding is clear and for specific purpose one goes, it's not necessary, it's not recommended, but it did not be made into a big issue. Because in life, phases come and phases go. So what comes in phases, it is okay if one goes through the particular phase at a particular time. There are small issues which need not be made into very big issues. So if the devotee is overall philosophically clear, sometimes we go to a very great extreme in avoiding the worship of the devatas. It's almost as if we treat demigod worship as if it is a sinful activity. It's a ludicrous misrepresentation actually. It's a virtuous activity, it's a pious activity. It will not be activity of pure devotional service, but still it is a dharmic activity. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Chaitanya Charan explains that there are different kinds of celebrations or festivals that Vaishnavas may participate in. One is what Vaishnavas delight in is Bhakti festivals centered on Krishna. But he says there can be different kinds of festivals. So he talks about two other kinds. There can be for social purposes. A devotee may sometimes participate in demigod worship festivals also. So in the Bhagavatam is described that when Maharaj Pruthu, in the fourth canto, when he performed yajnas, externally in the yajnas, there is devatas were being offered ahutis, but internally he was meditating on Vishnu. So he did those rituals. And third, he says also is that there can be social festivals which are not connected with dharma also, but if they are connected with some social cause. Say, in today's case, if somebody is in a school or in a college or in an office and they are celebrating Independence Day, it's not that we have to avoid celebrating that. We may not go out of ourselves way and organize and sponsor and things like that, but if it's a part of celebration, we can celebrate. So there is no need to make this into a very big issue. As long as the philosophical understanding is clear and as long as the determination to practice bhakti is steady, then occasionally if something is required for some specific purpose, that is okay. We don't advocate it, but we don't have to make a campaign against it. It is something which is required, do that and move forward in the process of bhakti. Don't make that a devotee feel guilty for doing something which is actually dharmic. Just because it is not pure devotional service, that doesn't mean that it is sinful. That's what it is. It's a contamination it's a lower level of devotion, but we cannot artificially expect everyone to always stay at the highest level of devotion. So and we ensure that whatever happens, devotees feel connected. It is not that because a devotee feels that I need to go and worship some devata, and because of that everybody else is going to look down at me, so I cannot come in the devotee association. Now that I worship a devata, I am going to be treated as untouchable in devotee association. It should never be like that. So we should be clear in our explanation about the standard process of bhakti, about the clear understanding of the goals, but for practical circumstances, things can vary. We don't have to make that into a huge issue. Okay. Yeah, there's one question. I think that's the last question. Yeah.
What practical things we can do to get rid of tendency of over-analyzing things?
Okay. What can we do to overcome the tendency to overanalyze things? First, we need the association of those who like to analyze. Because if we have a tendency to overanalyze, that means we have a tendency to analyze. And if we associate with those who just don't like analysis, then we will feel throttled. So it is our intellectual need, and we need to associate with devotees who like to analyze. There are different kinds of devotees and they have different kinds of focus on studying Shastra. So it is both Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Rupa Goswami explain that we need not just the association of devotees, but we need the association of like-minded devotees. Sajatiya Ashaya Bhagavad Bhakti Sangha. Sajatiya Ashaya, those who think similarly, those who have similar aspirations in bhakti. So if we have intellectual needs, we need to find out devotees who are also intellectually oriented and associate with them more. And in that place, we will get analysis. And that will nourish us. Now it's possible that in some cases, we may be going into an over-analytical mode. And if that happens, if overall our need for analysis is nourished, then neglecting certain things will not feel like suppression. We do that all the time. Now, even when we are studying academic subjects, it's not that we go deep into every single point that is there. If something which are important, we feel go into it. We did go into it. Something which we feel really interested, we go deep into it. But other things, just pass over. So like that, some things we have to pass over, that is fine. And even the things which you have to pass over, if the same thoughts, same questions keep coming again and again, at that time it is we can keep that questions in a list ready, and we can contact some devotees whenever they are available who are specialists in these subjects. It's not that all senior devotees know everything. As we advance in bhakti, we understand that the knowledge of the philosophy itself is a vast ocean. And it's not just a vast ocean, you could say that there are many vast oceans. For some devotees may specialize in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, some devotees may specialize in Vedic knowledge, some devotees may specialize in, say, the Upanishads, some devotees may specialize in Bhagavatam. So there are different devotees who specialize in different things. So if we find out that we have a particular kind of interest, And that is what kind of thoughts keep coming. Then we associate with those devotees and learn from them. We may do some service specifically for them and get connected with them. And that way they will also give us some time and answer questions. So it's not that the tendency to be overanalyzed has to be suppressed, but we have to be realistic. Some questions, we just can't go around in life seeking answers to every single thing that we find in scripture. So if some things keep persistently coming, we should find a way to get some level of satisfactory answers. So humility in the intellectual realm means the willingness to acknowledge that I don't know and that I can't know. There are certain things which I'm just not able to understand. That humility also we need to have. It is not necessary that just by analyzing a lot, certain things will become clear to me. It may require purification, it may require mercy, it may require some higher revelation to come also. So, if something persistently troubles us, we can invest some amount of time in trying to find out the answers and trying to associate with those who will give us the answers. But overall, if we find ourselves getting caught in details that are not important repeatedly, then we have to have a sense of perspective. And by cultivating intellectual humility, we can also move forward and stay focused on the important things. So there are hard doubts and there are brain doubts. Hard doubts means the doubts and questions about the core principles of Bhakti. Is chanting Hare Krishna really the Yoga Dharma? Is Krishna really God? Is Bhakti Yoga the best process? These are very fundamental doubts. But some questions about brain, fifth canto cosmology, some questions about Sankhya. These are brain doubts. They are not really immediately relevant to our practice of Bhakti. So brain doubts we can keep in a state of suspended judgment. Now, I can say that at my level of understanding, I don't know how to accept this. So I'm not going to reject it. I can't accept it, but I'm not going to reject it. I'll just keep it in a state of suspended judgment. I'll move forward in my bhakti. And over a period of time, I'll understand it in due course. And hard doubts, we should spend our time in analyzing and associating with those who can help in analysis and get it clearer understanding. That way, by having a proper perspective and proper association, we can deal with the tendency of analyzing without getting into the trap of over-analyzing. Thank you very much. Yeah. I think
we know about Bhagavad Gita and Uddhav Gita, but I've heard there are different kind of Gita, like in Skanda Puran there is Guru Gita which is told by Lord Shiva to Parvati, there is Ganesh Gita, there is one Gita which is told by Lord Ram to Ayodhya Vasis before departing. So
okay.
Please tell about.
Okay, so there are many other Gitas which are apart from the Bhagavad Gita and Uddhav Gita also. What about them? Not everything that is there within the broad Indian tradition is necessarily of the same level of authenticity. Madhvacharya talks about Shastra Taratamya. Taratamya means hierarchy or classification. So for example, in the Siddhanta Darpan, Baldev Vidyabhushan has written that book called Siddhanta Darpan, and there he states that certain books, like say the Devi Bhagavad, that is not an authentic Puran in the category of the 18 Puranas. So, and sometimes the followers of Devi Bhagavad claim that that is the real Bhagavad, and what the Vaishnava Bhagavad is not the Bhagavad. But that is clearly not true, because the Devi Bhagavad is a later book. The Devi Bhagavad is aware of the Srimad Bhagavad, and it claims that that is not the actual Bhagavad, we are the real Bhagavad. So it is basically a book later written by certain people who are the worshippers of the particular devatas, and they have tried to ascribe it to sages, and that way they try to gain authenticity for their traditions. So many of the later Gitas, less known Gitas, the later Gitas, they try to follow the pattern of the Bhagavad Gita and try to glorify the particular Devata in a way similar to how Krishna is glorified. So there are certain truths, certain statements within those Gitas which, if they are harmonizable with the Siddhanta that is given in the scriptures, then they are acceptable. But if they contain certain things which are not harmonizable with the Siddhanta, then they are to be considered contextually given for particular people, but they are not necessarily part of the Vedic canon. So we have to look at each of those books which are called as the Gita, and we have to see whether they are actually a part of the scriptural canon. And for that we may have to look at the broader traditions and what they talk about various books. So the content of the books as well as the explanation about the authenticity of those books as explained in the broader tradition, that will help us to understand the level of authenticity of the content in the various books that are also considered to be the Gitas. So thank you very much. Antra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanand.